forward to this. And now we're very happy to welcome the Reverend Dr. Janine Burns.
Well, it is so happy to see all my friends from the New Thought Spiritual Center and beyond. Thank you for everyone for joining me today. Intention deficit disorder. As physical beings having a physical human experience, the highest intention that you can have for your life is the intention to live and move and have your being in God. This is what Dr. Ernest Holmes called the summum bonum, which is Latin for highest good. It's the intention to live and move and have your being in God. So let's personalize that. My highest intention is to live and move and have my being in God. Say it with me. My highest intention is to live and move and have my being in God. Now, let's take that affirmation and kick it up a notch. Let's just change one little word, which changes everything. Listen for it. My highest intention is to live and move and have my being as God. My highest intention is to live and move and has my being as God in expression. God expresses in me, through me, and as me. And this means that I can have a personal experience, a personal expression of the qualities of God, including joy, peace, love, intelligence, wholeness, abundance, energy, beauty, creativity, freedom, order, power, strength, creativity. The list goes on and on. And if you've been a New Thought student and followed the teachings for a while, then you likely already have this mindset. And you have experience consciously living, moving, and having your being as God in expression. You actually feel your connection to what some people call source energy while in prayer and meditation and during your everyday life experience. Your intuition, which is your divine guidance system, becomes heightened and sharpened. You've learned to follow it. More and more, you become consciously connected and more aware in the now moment of your oneness with source energy, the creator of all that is. And with that intention to live and move and have your being in God in expression, suddenly your life changes and you see and experience God. You see and experience good in everything. You find yourself in the flow of life. You often experience divine synchronicity, such as being in the right place at the right time with the right people showing up. You're divinely guided in all ways, and you're divinely guided always. It is because of your commitment to do your daily spiritual work and continually endeavor to raise your consciousness that you've made your personal connection to God the indwelling presence of God. So let's look for just a moment at this intention from a biblical basis. In Luke 12:31 in the New Testament, we read, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." Pretty simple and direct. Seek the kingdom of God first, and then everything else will fall into divine order. First, seek to know God, not as some external force or presence from which you're separate, and not some anthropomorphic God in the sky type of being, but as the very essence and core of who and what you are. Realize and align with the idea that you are the manifestation of this presence and power. It seeks to express in you and through you and as you. And there's some wonderful names for this core self. Call it what you will. It's your essential self, your authentic self, your magnificent self, your divine nature. So I want to look at what gets in the way of our intention to live and move our being as God in expression. Let's look at what can be the deficit in having intention deficit disorder. Most often it's an issue with the ego getting in the way. And here are some warning signs that can be a deficit that if you find them, you're going to get yourself back centered to that, your divine nature. Number one, you're not in charge of your thinking. Your thinking is in charge of you. Your mind somehow gets triggered from a negative thought, and suddenly your thinking becomes so negative. Your inner critic takes over and bombards you with critical thoughts about yourself. And sometimes those thoughts can actually be mean. They can be so harsh and critical that you're actually bullying yourself. And more than an inner critic, sometimes the voice in your head can actually be an inner bully. Anybody experience the inner bully? Well, if you haven't, a good example of the inner bully hijacking your thinking, because that's what it does, it hijacks your thinking, is when you're comparing yourself to others and then deciding that you come up short and they are better than you are in some way. And that inner bully can get so nasty and just beat you up and tell you all sorts of things that are wrong with you when you're comparing yourself to others. Number 2, being overly concerned about how you appear to others. I love the title of the book. One of my mentors, the famous New Thought teacher, Terry Cole Whitaker, wrote, "What you think of me is none of my business." Now that is a great book. What you think of me is none of my business. When we are connected to our authentic self, with our true God nature, we're not concerned with other people's opinions because we know who we are and we can stand firm in that truth. Number 3 of what gets in the way of the intention is being distracted. These days, our cell phones are our greatest distraction. So often you see people and they just have their heads down and they're looking on their phone, reading the news, playing games, following social media. It can be addictive. The bottom line is that we're distracted from being in the now moment, which certainly gets in the way of our intention to live and move and have our being in Goddess expression. Number 4, not taking responsibility for your choices. I'm reminded of a true story that happened back in the late 1960s at an airport in California. It's a story about a woman who was waiting for her flight and she was really intense and nervous. She was going to San Jose and the boarding announcement was clear. Passengers for Air California flight 45 to San Francisco are now boarding at gate 5. And the lady who's going to San Jose hurries over to gate 5. And just as she was boarded, the announcement was repeated, but she wasn't listening. She was distracted. And somehow the ticket taker at the boarding ramp only glanced at her ticket and didn't catch the error. Now, this was back in the late 60s. This was before tickets were automated. There was no computer scanner and checking your ticket. It was just the person at the gate. So the agent let the lady board the plane. And the woman found her seat. She buckled up, all ready for takeoff. The plane got to the runway and the pilot gave his customary pre-flight instructions. He started saying, "Welcome to Air California, flight 45 to San Francisco." Suddenly you hear this loud shriek. The lady bolts out of her seat, runs down the aisle looking for a flight attendant, and she's shouting, "This plane is going to the wrong place. I'm supposed to be going to San Jose." That is pretty funny, isn't it? One of the stewardess, who was already buckled in, grabbed her arm and swung her around in the seat next to her in a very stern voice. She said to her, "We're going to get you to San Jose, but first you're going to San Francisco." The lady was so distraught that she yelled out, "I'm going to San Jose. You obviously didn't read my ticket. I'm going to miss a wedding in San Jose, and it's all your fault." Not taking responsibility. Number 5, you're easily offended and react rather than respond to people and circumstances. Often when we react, it can be very negative, and thoughts and feelings of this nature, they come from our ego. They do not come from our authentic self. And when we come from our authentic self, we learn to respond from our center of divine love and peace and guidance. Number 6, you believe my way is the right way. You're inflexible and you're rigid, and some people call it being a control freak. And those of us who tend to have control issues know what that is all about. And number 7, last but not least, you dwell in low energy emotions. Emotions such as anger, sadness, grief, depression, regret, fear. Everyone has these emotions and feels them because it's part of having the human experience. And when we get stuck, it's when we get stuck in these low energy emotions and dwell in the energy of these negative emotions that we suffer. The key is to move through the emotions. The way out is the way through. I love that expression from Dr. Dominic Polifrone. When going through hell, don't stop, don't pitch a tent, and don't take a selfie. Just keep going. Of course, it's important to process any negative emotions. And you may want to look, what is the lesson involved here? What did I learn here? You may want to look at the blessing. What was the blessing involved here? How can I grow? And then when we're willing to see the events of our lives as opportunities for growth, painful moments can be transformed into lightened ones. Then move on. Don't stay stuck in low energy emotions. One thing that's very helpful I want to mention is havening. I have become a havening technique certified practitioner, and the word haven means a place of safety and refuge. It's a sanctuary, and it's a wonderful neurosensory technique that I encourage you to check out on YouTube. Havening, HAVENING.org, or on YouTube. Okay, so how do you stay in alignment with your intention to consciously live expressing your magnificent, authentic, divine self? It starts by simply making a decision to do so. There's a book called The Hua Hu Qing, based on the teachings of the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who is best known for writing the Tao Te Ching. Now, the Hua Hu Qing, that's HUAHUCHING, is the collection of Lao Tzu's oral teachings on the subject of attaining enlightenment and mastery. They've been called a roadmap to the divine realm for ordinary beings. And in chapter 48, he taught, once you arrive there at what he calls the spontaneous awareness of the great oneness, it's not necessary to struggle and to maintain unity with it. All you have to do is participate in it. It's all around you, omnipresent, omniscient, and omni-action. That reminds me of another story of the Hollywood actress who, she was a chronic nail biter. She would have acrylic nails put on each day, and by the end of the day, she had chewed them off. She'd been in therapy for this condition for 13 years. So one day she went to a new psychologist, and she described at length to him all she had learned about herself during those years of therapy. Well, the psychiatrist told the actress that he would not take her as a client, but he said that he would send her out with everything she needed to know to stop biting her nails. And the actress was astonished. She said, "What is that?" The psychiatrist said, "All you need to know is this. If you want to stop biting your nails, take your hand out of your mouth." The actress became violently angry. She jumped up, she led a large crystal vase, she smashed it on the psychiatrist's desk, and she stomped around the office, screaming at the top of her lungs for like 10 minutes. Finally, her rage dissipated. She turned to the psychiatrist and she said, "No one has ever put it to me quite that way." She left and she made the decision to keep her hands out of her mouth, so she stopped biting her nails. She made a decision and held an intention. And so once you and I make the decision and hold the intention to live as God in expression, then it's simply a matter of holding that intention through our daily thoughts, through prayer, affirmation, and meditation. And here's a bonus thought for you before I close out. This is chapter 51 of the Hua Hu Qing, and it reads, "Those who want to know the truth of the universe should practice the 4 universal cardinal virtues." 1, the first is reverence for all life. This manifests as unconditional love and respect for oneself and all other beings. 2, the second is natural sincerity. This manifests as honesty, simplicity, and faithfulness. The third is gentleness. This manifests as kindness, consideration for others, and sensitivity to spiritual truth. And the fourth is supportiveness. This manifests as service to others without expectation of reward. Lao Tzu said the 4 virtues are not an external dogma, but part of your original nature, what we're calling your authentic divine self. And Lao Tzu said, quote, "When practiced, they give birth to wisdom and invoke the 5 blessings: health, wealth, happiness, longevity, and peace." Students of truth, I call upon you to hold the intention to be God in expression. Stay steadfast in your spiritual practice of prayer and affirmation, meditation, and guarding your thinking. Throughout the day, check your thinking, pause, ask yourself, what was I just thinking? Am I looking for what's right or am I looking for what's wrong? Am I coming from my ego mind or am I living from my conscious awareness of being God and expression? Am I responding with the light and love that I am? And it's your commitment to your own evolution. When you do so, you will likely experience a surge of liberating confidence. You'll have a sense of empowerment and a really high resolve to bring forth this reality. And even if you miss the mark, even if you don't quite get it right, all things will work together to create a life in which you will see and you will experience the goodness, the glory, and the magnificence of God in everything. And so it is, and so begins the lesson.